Today we will discuss the following: introduction, setting the record straight. We'll of course engage in the facts, timeline of events, and discuss the reports and analysis of the reports. The cleanup, what data from the ministry shows that we did internally. State of affairs, the realities and problems. R4 effect, the way forward. And public message, transparency, integrity, and trust. And conclusion, final words. Mr. Chairman, why are we here today? Well, today we stand at a critical junction in the history of St. Martin's transportation sector. For far too long, our taxi, T-plates, bus industry has been clouded by uncertainty, opacity, which is not being transparent, and decisions driven at times by political expediency rather than good governance. Before I entered office in May 2024, I sat in this very parliament as an MP, repeatedly questioning the issues of permits. The answers received were inconsistent, incomplete, and at times intentionally evasive. Permits was handed out recklessly, the market was saturated, that's what I kept saying, and the stability of the industry was compromised. In March 2024, SOAB moved to launch an investigation into whether the proper process were followed. 3 months, the Integrity Chamber approached my office to support the inquiry into potential fraudulent activities, and as Minister of TIAT, I fully cooperated, openly, promptly, and without hesitation, because we must strengthen the foundations of trust in our institutions. When I assumed office, I inherited a sector of disorder. And for the past year and a half, my team and I have been gathering, verifying, compiling information, digging through layers of documents, decisions, timelines, and testimonies. Over time, internally, we began calling this the Sac Passe saga, because every new layer uncovered brought more questions tied to the same period, the same decisions, and the same individuals connected to the 2023-2024 timeline. A saga indeed, Mr. Chairman, one rooted in mismanagement, irregularities, and questionable oversight. While the investigations were ongoing, I refused to sit back. In January 2025, we initiated a structured internal cleanup through the Inspectorate of Economic Affairs and Transportation, what I usually call IATA. Every operator, taxi and bus was required to present themselves so we could confirm the validity of permits, the accuracy of documentation, and the conditions of their vehicle. This was not about punishment. It was about protecting integrity of the industry and ensuring everyone operates on the same and fair, transparent playing field. What we uncovered confirmed long-standing concerns: administrative gaps, incomplete or missing procedures, inconsistencies in record keeping, and potential misconduct in the issuing of certain permits. Today, I present to you the combined findings of the SOAB, the Integrity Chamber, and TIAT's own internal review. Together, these provide a comprehensive picture of the sector, how it arrived at this state, what was done, and what was neglected, and what must now be corrected. But this presentation is not merely about exposing mistakes of the past. It's about charting a responsible, transparent, and sustainable way forward. We will show you the timeline, the facts, the lessons, and present clear solutions and regulatory steps to bring order, credibility, and accountability back to the transportation industry. St. Martin deserves a transportation sector that is organized, fair, and future-ready. And our operators deserve stability and predictability. and our people deserve leadership that confronts problems head-on, with courage, with transparency, and with a commitment to change. That is the work we began, that is the work we continue, and that is the work we will deliver. We will get it done. Given the context of my presentation today, I found it necessary to highlight the legislation and policies as it relates to the publication transportation, all of which can be found online. The National Ordinance on Public Transportation, this ordinance regulates the conditions for licenses to be issued, denied, and/or revoked, and the type of license issued, the requirements of advisory committee, rules pertaining to assistant drivers and tariffs, and non-compliance with the ordinance. Next, the National Decree Committee Public Transportation. The National Decree further outlines the rules and the establishments of the advisory committee as required in accordance with the above-mentioned ordinance, as well as aspects to be considered in the advice that the committee provides to the minister. Next, the National Decree on Public Transportation. The National Decree regulates the requirements for license applications, inspection of vehicles, insurance, driver conditions such as conduct, number of passengers, lost objects, need to transport passengers, conditions of the vehicle, information for the passenger, and tariffs, and also regulates the duration of the license and the consequences of the noncompliance. Next, the Public Transportation Policy Framework for St. Martin, September 2014. This policy provides guidelines to identify and address the needs of the public and the public transportation sector, namely bus, taxi, tour, and group operators, by creating an environment that fosters their development and promotes professionalism in the transportation sector. Next, we have the Moratorium Policy on Public Transportation, which was published on February 18, 2014, and updated May 1, 2019. The policy restricts the issuance of new bus and taxi tour licenses to prevent market saturation and address outdated regulation. And finally, we have the Moratorium Policy on Public Transportation's licenses, updated September 27, 2023, and published on September 29, 2023. This policy informs the public about granting, renewal, and revoking of public transportation licenses, as well as applicable general rules for existing and new public transportation licenses. It has come to my attention during the entire review that clear definitions on the types of services within the public sector was still unclear. Therefore, today, I would like to set the record straight and break it down for the public accordingly. Passenger transport categories are described as follows. B plate for a motor vehicle, small bus, to transport a passenger on a designated route with a bus designed to transport fewer than 10 persons, or for a motor vehicle, large bus, to transport passengers on a designated route according to an approved timeline with one or more buses designed to transport 10 or more people. Then you have the taxi plate for a motor vehicle designed for transport of no more than 14 passengers. Then you have T plate for a motor vehicle designed to transport more than 7 persons, not including the driver. Then you have R plates for motor vehicles designed to rent to passengers for daily fee, no driver included in the renting of the vehicle. And then you have the G plate for a motor vehicle designed to transport more than 15 persons, not including the driver. In addition, the same applies when it comes to understanding the definitions and purpose of an assistant driver, which is a chauffeur in dienst, and that of a hulp driver, a hulp chauffeur. For the assistant driver, the request is made when a license holder is hiring someone to drive for them, essentially a business acquiring an employee. So the length of time for said permit would vary anywhere between 1 to 5 years. For a help driver, the request is made when the license holder is sick or unable to work due to age. The permit is limited to 6 months with the possibility of requesting an extension. Valid proof of said circumstances must be provided with the application request as justification. Now I move over to point 2 of my presentation: the facts, the timelines of the events, and an overview of the independent reports analysis. This timeline will portray the full visual of all steps taken, but rather will showcase the key elements that should be highlighted in the timeline. June 2023, Publication 1, public announcement of public transportation cleanup placed in newspaper. Then August 2023, public announcement 2, in regards to the amendments to the licenses that was placed in the newspapers, date to request such as the August 28, 2023 before 12 p.m. This was the one with the swap. Then September 2023, publication 3, this public announcement was in regards to assistant and help drivers requesting their own licenses, was placed in the newspaper, and to date, request as such was date to request such was September 11, 2023 by 12 p.m. And then again, September 2023, email sent September 8th by the department head of ETT and acting SG to the Minister and Cabinet of TIAT in regards to a moratorium being in effect. And then December 2023, publication 4, public announcement to inform about the establishing of the caps. And then January 2024, election. Then March 2024, Minister Lambrie announces 142 taxis and on 97, so 142 taxis were issued during that time and 94 bus issued, and that's the exact time, the same month that the SOAB investigation began. Then May 2024, I was sworn in personally on May 2024, and then in June, right after I got sworn in, Integrity Chamber began investigation and public announcement hold on the license. Oh, and then I made a public announcement that I will hold out on issuing all licenses.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social health insurances.
24/7 TV programming on www.stmartinmediacenter.com, SXM Daily News, PBS NewsHour, Now You Know, Com programs, documentary, entertainment, sports events, Saturday children's hours, religion programs, and movies. Click on SXM TV broadcast to see your favorite programs.
St. Martin, as heavy rain falls across our region, we urge all residents and visitors to exercise caution and stay alert. Here are the areas prone to street flooding, flash floods, and/or rock slides. Avoid these locations until water levels subside. Ateelage Road Roundabout, Cul-de-sac. Arch Road, Sucker Garden. Beacon Hill Road, Simpson Bay. Ateelage Road, Border Monument, Belvedere, Lower Princess Quarter. Billy Folly Road, Cole Bay. Emma Plain, Phillipsburg. L.B. Scott Road, Cul-de-sac. Rhine Road, Lowlands. Welhalaken Road, Low K Roundabout, Cahill, Little Bay. Well Road, Wellington Road, and Orange Grove Road, Cole Bay. Yancho Rousquin Boulevard, Point Blanche, and Sakersgut Road, Cul-de-sac. Remember, safety comes first. Let's work together to keep our community safe. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Department of Communication.
Anything I say here today, I can say outside of Parliament where there's no immunity. And I challenge anyone, and I've said it once and I'll say it again, I challenge anyone to make those statements outside of this floor of Parliament and call my name. I will, what we call here now, I will bummel you. Those who got it, got it. Mr. Chairman, I'll start by reading a nice quote. It goes like this. When someone tries to flip the script to cover their own misdeeds, that's not transparency, that's deflection. And the trust always catches up, no matter how loud the distraction. I could not have said it better myself. Mr. Chairman, these are the words of the Minister of TIAT on her Facebook page, her post. After I called for the message, I called for her resignation concerning the allegations of what is actually taking place. Right now, where the minister is in charge of a ministry, that allegations have been brought forth against her husband. Mr. Chairman, things fly by our minds. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, person look. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this was.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes.
I earlier asked you, I said I know we're not in a public meeting, but I wanted to make a proposal of order. And I know it doesn't really apply to committee meetings, but I wanted to speak and just make a proposal of order. And it has to do, Mr. Chairman, and with the commencement of a presentation by a member of Parliament. I would be the last person to say that we should not be able to operate on the basis of equality of arms, so to speak. However, until there are rules established for members of Parliament to use the presentation, the visual presentation, I would want to suggest to you, Chair, and to the other members, don't then let us start with it unprepared. Mr. Chairman, I'm not saying that because of wanting to curtail any member of parliament. I know the ministers have the possibility for presentations. However, Mr. Chairman, persons often like to say, yeah, but you have been here like nearly forever, and I have experienced what it means to have a member of parliament request to use the visual presentation here in parliament to show up persons. And at that time, years ago, I said no, until we have regulations that every member of parliament, if they so desire, can use visual presentations, we are not going to start it.
I would like for us to also establish guidelines. And this is why I said in my notification, I do not want, and I felt like this is becoming a tit for tat. And this is what is happening. And I said it, whether I agree with something, I cannot tell someone how to feel. And what happens is too often, and I'm hearing members say, but you should do this and you should do that. And I say that I can't tell people how to feel. My opinion is my opinion. I do think that we are shifting the focus of the meeting. I do not want it to become something too personal, but the member know where he's going with it. I have no idea. But however, this was exactly my point, right? It's all fun and games and laughter until it gets serious. So let us handle the people business. Let us get down to, don't get distracted because we have people in the Tribune, because none of the meetings before, we had this, nor we had animations. None. So let us not get excited because people are in the Tribune and handle the people's business. So I agree. If we're going to go forward, let's go forward now. But I must say now, for both parties, you know what? We learned the medias and the pictures are in the atmosphere. There's no taking it back. And the world is looking at our parliament. It's not 1996 where we're just over the radio. So let's do what we have to do.
It's important to mention that, and the Honorable Chairlady, Sarah Westcott Williams, said it, not because it's a committee meeting or a central committee meeting or a public meeting. We are members of parliament, and I believe that we must conduct ourselves in that way all the time. What I think is unfortunate is that while the minister in her presentation to Parliament was basically, the majority of her presentation was based on reports and investigations that was done that she was relating to the committees. These, while there may have been some personal opinions on her account in there, the majority of her presentation was based on information, whether it's from the SORB or the Integrity Chamber. These reports are going to continue to circulate throughout our population, whether the minister presents them to Parliament or not. What I find is very unfair, though, that the picture of my former colleague, former MP Theo Heiliger, is put up on a screen, and it isn't the first time that we've seen the picture. We've seen the picture on social media. The thing is, when you're bringing stuff like that as a member of parliament, and the person isn't here to defend his or herself, I think that's where I think when you start to go down that road, we must be prepared for what is to come after.
Mr. Chairman, I don't like what's going on here today. I think we all feel it. One thing about me is I've always been very vocal about not mentioning persons on the floor of Parliament that cannot defend themselves. But today, there seems to be something very different going on. It's not only on the side of, and I concur with MP Meyers when I say to see former MP Heiliger Martin's picture there while we are on the floor of Parliament. That is not the right thing to do, period. But also, I need to also acknowledge the fact that we can make presentations and we can bring it forward in a way that does not purposely antagonize the members of Parliament as well. And then I'm looking at the minister, through you, Mr. Chairman. Why? Because that presentation could have been held without the quirky AI pictures as well. And we need to also acknowledge from all sides what the effect is of our actions.
I find that we are very hypocritical here today. Very, very hypocritical, because a proposal of order, whatever it may be in the rules of order, could have stopped when I saw that presentation. All right, this meeting could have been a closed-door meeting, because just like how, I could tell you straight out, I'm a federal detective by profession. And when you have anything with it, whether it is a systemic investigation or investigation on a whole, you do what is necessary on that side of the table. You come here, you put something up here on top of this thing, and it also can antagonize my colleague. Because we all know exactly where this thing was going from the time when the minister, when MP Lacruz said what he said to the minister, and the minister also put out her stuff public. So we all know why we're in here today. We all know what the possibilities were that would have happened here today in Parliament. And from the time that presentation come with those type of pictures up there, we should have stopped it from then. We could have stopped it from then. Not wait until now the MP is presenting and we want to stand and say something about it because of a former MP.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurance.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
24/7 TV programming on www.stmartinmediacenter.com. SXM Daily News.
Finally, Brommy Court verdict on Westview. I wish to inform the public that on Monday, November 10th, the Court of First Instance issued 2 favorable judgments for the Ministry of Brommy regarding Westview construction. The first case concerned the construction freeze issued by the Ministry of Brommy earlier this year. The project developer challenged this decision and sought to have it overturned. The second case dealt with a lobverzoek, which is a tool available to the public in which to receive information regarding government decisions. It is important to note that despite both cases being won by the government, one particular element of the case was lost, which was the amount of time that we took to respond to the lobverzoek, to which we have to pay 325 guilders to the claimant. Allow me very briefly to go over some of the decisions from the verdict with the public. And why this is important is because throughout this process, there have been many claims within, both across within the political spectrum as well as the media, regarding the rights of the Ministry of Brommy to execute what they did. So, of course, the first question, was the defendant, that being government, authorized to enforce? The court ruled as follows. It is undisputed that at the time of the contested decision, far-reaching excavation and demolition works were being carried out in execution of the construction project. The court established, based on the available documents, that regardless of whether this claimants actually submitted an application of excavation construction permit to the FEN 2022, no excavation construction permits under the LRO, which is an ordinance regarding the civil works permits, were granted. The claimant's argument that the required permission is implicitly part of the issued building permit cannot be accepted in light of the foregoing. Furthermore, this cannot be inferred from the text of the building permit On the contrary, the building permit explicitly states that the construction project is also subject to other applicable ordinances, of which, of course, the LRO is one of them. Why is this important? Because since taking office, a number of persons have come to me explaining that because they have a building permit, they automatically have a civil works permit, and that is not indeed the case. The court also addressed the concern, was the enforcement disproportionate? In that, the court ruled the claimant's argument that the goals have already been achieved with the issued building permit cannot be accepted, as mentioned before. The public interest outweighs the financial interests of the claimants. The court also takes into account that the defendant offered the claimant, defendant being government, in this case the Minister of Rami, offered the claimants the opportunity to proceed with the mobilization works on the site. The defendant, the government, also offered the claimant an accelerated application and approval prior to and immediately after the building stop, all with the aim of minimizing construction delays. The fact that the claimant chose not to immediately submit the required application must remain at their own expenses and risk. Why is this important? Because what you've seen a lot in the media is this sort of narrative that the Minister of Rami is against development and is against developers. The reality is we need to look at development not only as buildings. What development is also how it's done and who it serves. And it's also a question of government also making its effort to facilitate all persons within its possibilities. Is there a violation of the principle of equality? The claimant invokes the principle of equality. They point out that no excavation construction permits were granted for other construction projects in St. Martin either. The defendant acts contrary to the prohibition of arbitrariness by now without adequate criteria, making an example of the claimants and imposing a building stop solely for their construction project. The court found that the ground of this appeal failed. The defendant, the government, explained in the statement of defense that it was observed that the process for excavation permits has not gone well in recent years. The defendant wishes to improve this, that is the government, and given the lack of sufficient executive capacity, has chosen to prioritize enforcement on large construction projects. The defendant, that is the government, applied the same approach to the claimant's construction projects. However, the conversations there quickly became legalized, and instead of submitting the necessary applications, the claimants argued that no excavation permit was needed and moved to litigation. Furthermore, the defendant's explanation sufficiently shows that insofar as other construction projects were comparable to those of the claimants, the same approach, i.e. a conversation, a dialogue by the ministry and the minister, was always the norm. The conclusion is therefore that the claimants have not sufficiently demonstrated that they were treated unequally compared to similar cases. In view of the explanation provided by the defendant, there is no basis for concluding that the building stop in question was imposed arbitrarily. Why is this important? Because this was also something that was supported and mentioned in the court verdict as being referenced and supported by members of parliament in the question hour related to this. It's very important as well to not politicize government processes for simple benefits and sound bites. Furthermore, as the circumstances the defendant failed to act adequately for years in the absence of excavation permits provides insufficient grounds for a different judgment. The reason for this is that the principle of equality does not extend so far that the defendant is obliged to keep repeating mistakes once made. The claimant's argument therefore fails. Why is this important? Because, ladies and gentlemen, change is hard. Yes, there have been lots of mistakes made by government, and in particular the Ministry of Rami, for decades. But just because it's been done in the past, it does not mean it has to continue. And that's a court verdict.
you explained sees to the that the court found the construction freeze justified. During this court case, you told the judge that you wanted the freeze in place to study, review the way they were excavating and all the work that was done. Because the trees were cut, there were septic tanks and excavation ongoing. Then a few months later, you retroactively gave the civil works permits. The question is, based on what did you decide that? Because the affected residents, they hired a geoengineering firm, first one that gave the assignment back because they didn't get the information from VROMI. Then they hired another firm from Holland, GeoBest, and they did a lobverzoek through the lawyer and requested all the information that pertains to this excavation, and they didn't get it. So they wrote the GeoBest report without the geoengineering information, all the analysis, that information they don't have. So after this was published by the Daily Herald, Dam Caribbean said they did have an engineering report, so that they had a study done. But that was not shared by VROMI with GeoBest. So based on the LOP request. Is this report there? What have you reviewed? How did you come to the decision? Because what VROMI provided was a sheet that only says that the flamboyant trees that were cut need to be brought to the landfill and the debris needs to be brought to the landfill. But there's nothing about the depth, the width, the distance from the boundaries, etc., from the retaining wall, all of that. So what was the basis for the civil works permit issuance?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that. So there is a standard procedure with civil works permits that looks at the way in which you use the land. The discussion regarding the boundaries to the regarding the property itself is covered within the building permit. So the two are basically separate. And in the court case, it was established that this civil works permit doesn't deal with the size of the building, where the building actually is. That's been already put aside by the court. What this actually deals with is the manner in which excavation happens, where excavated material goes, and the impact of water flow in the area, if at all impacted by the building. So those are the considerations given for the civil works permit, not necessarily what the building looks like. Why? Because in the court's opinion, and this is something that talked with government continuity, if a building permit is issued, you don't now go through the building permit through a civil works permit. The two normally have to come together. In this case, it didn't, but the court effectively decided already that the discussion is not about should the building exist. That station has passed already, as confirmed by the court. It's really about the digging and the impact of the digging and how it was dug. So the question about the boundary, it wasn't part of this discussion. Secondly, with regards to the report within VROMI, I have to verify what was not given or given, because I don't have the information necessarily directly at hand. We can speak off after the session to give more information when the report itself was handed in or information requested from the ministry, because I don't have that information currently at hand. So if you could, either here or after, up to you, but that information of data when the request was made for the information from VROMI.
Through your lawyer, the government lawyer, there's been several requests.
Okay.
There was an official LOP request
yes.
Asking for all the technical information, and they didn't get it.
Okay.
So that is in the GeoBest report, says we can update the report once we get the information.
Okay. No, if that's the case, I will look into that to see why that wasn't given, because I wasn't aware that it wasn't given, because all lobverzoeken by law have to be replied to. So I will look into that, and I will, of course, get back to you on that to see where that potential miscommunication may have happened within the ministry.
There is also the issue of the verdict from January 25 that said that before October, there should be a new road for the residents so they can reach their homes. And October has passed, and there's no road. So that would pertain also to the civil works permit, right?
Not necessarily, because again, that January 25th judgment of 2024, I believe.
This year.
Of this year, because that was something that was considered before this. That's something that has to be held within the civil matters, but again, I will look into that. But if there's a court judgment, government itself doesn't intervene and take action on court judgments. It'd be up to the person who's taken government to court, who's taken the developer to court to then now follow up on that judgment having not been fulfilled, not necessarily government, because government themselves didn't have the injunction. It was the private citizen. So private cases, government doesn't intervene on. So
But the road is part of the plan of the building permit. It is on the plan. It's not there. So Vromi has an inspection, right?
Yes. So, but then again, what I'm trying to say is the minute something goes outside of government to a private civil law, government no longer gets involved. It's really now to follow up on that claim would have to be the private client or the private developer taking code. But we can always look into it, of course. But of course, once things go to the civil course by a court, government has intervened. I've been asked to intervene on a number of different things. And I think it's very important to recognize that once things go to the private legal system, government has no obligation, no, actually they have no right to actually intervene. But of course, I will follow up on these points because again, the whole point of this is that if you are sort of infringing on the quality of life of somebody else, it also has some elements that we can look into. But of course, I'll look see what the civil matters say and what role we can play in it as well.